Some of you are listening to this in silence. Not because the world is quiet, but because your heart has been louder than everything else around you. No noise, no one beside you, just you and the weight you've been carrying without telling anyone where it hurts. You did the right thing. You walked away when it would have been easier to stay. You told the truth when it would have been safer to stay silent. You held your ground when it cost you people instead of applause. And after that, the world did not argue with you. It went quiet. Let me tell you something gently. That silence is not emptiness. It is the place Allah brings you when He is about to speak to you in a way the crowd never could. The day you stop pretending, your soul finally speaks. Let me sit with you here for a moment, right where you are, in this exact space of your life. There comes a time when you grow tired in a way that sleep cannot fix. You are not physically exhausted. You are not even mentally overwhelmed. You are tired in your soul. Tired of being a version of yourself that feels borrowed. Tired of wearing a face that fits the room but does not fit your heart. Tired of agreeing with things just to keep the peace, even when that peace costs you a piece of who you are. At first, you may not even realize what is happening. You just feel it as a quiet heaviness in your chest. Conversations that once felt easy now feel forced. Laughter that once came naturally now feels delayed, like you have to think before you let it out. You begin to pause before you speak, not because you are afraid, but because something inside you is checking whether your words still match your values. And that is when your soul begins to speak, not out loud, not in a voice others can hear, but in a feeling that you cannot ignore anymore. You start to notice how often you bend yourself to fit into places that were never shaped for you. How often you soften your beliefs so they sound more acceptable. How often you hide your sincerity behind jokes, silence, or agreement. You realize that you have been living in what feels like borrowed space, a space where you are present but not fully yourself, where you are included but not truly aligned. And this realization is uncomfortable. Because pretending, even when it is gentle and well-intended, creates a quiet tension inside the heart. It is like carrying a weight you cannot see, but you feel every day. Over time, that weight begins to press on your prayers, your peace, and even the way you see yourself. Standing for truth does not usually begin with a bold declaration. It begins with a small, honest moment between you and Allah. A moment where you admit, Ya Allah, I do not feel right living this way anymore. It begins when your heart refuses to keep agreeing just to belong. When it refuses to keep laughing just to avoid discomfort. When it refuses to keep silent just to avoid standing out. And in that moment, you may feel fear. You may think, if I stop pretending, will I still be accepted? If I stop bending, will I still be welcome? If I stand as I truly am, will anyone still stand with me? These questions are heavy and Allah knows you carry them. This is why this stage of your journey often feels lonely before it feels peaceful. You start to feel a distance between who you used to be and who you are becoming. The old version of you knew how to move easily in every room. The new version of you starts to feel out of place in spaces that once felt familiar, and that can hurt. You may miss the simplicity of before. You may miss how easy it was to belong, how effortless it was to blend in, how little you had to think before you spoke or acted. But let me tell you something gently. Ease is not always a sign of truth. Sometimes ease comes from alignment with the crowd, not alignment with Allah. This is why Allah allows this discomfort to enter your life, not to punish you, not to burden you, but to wake you up. Your soul is no longer meant to live in borrowed spaces. It is no longer meant to survive on borrowed values, borrowed reactions, borrowed ways of being. You are being called back to something real. And real is rarely comfortable at first. When you begin to live with sincerity, you will notice small changes that feel big inside. You will speak less, but your words will carry more weight. You will laugh less at what feels empty and more at what feels true. You will walk away from conversations, habits, and even people that no longer sit well with your heart. This does not mean you become harsh. It does not mean you become cold. It means you become honest. Honest with yourself. Honest with your intentions. honest with Allah. And honesty has a way of simplifying your life even as it makes it more challenging. You begin to realize that not every silence needs to be filled. Not every disagreement needs to be turned into a fight. Not every invitation needs to be accepted. Not every space needs your presence. You start choosing where you place your heart, not just where you place your body. This is alignment. Alignment is when your inner world and your outer world begin to speak the same language. When your prayers and your actions no longer feel like they belong to two different people. When what you believe and what you live start moving in the same direction. But let me be honest with you. Alignment will cost you something. It may cost you approval. It may cost you comfort. It may cost you familiarity. Some people will feel the change before you ever explain it. They will sense that you no longer move the way you used to, that you no longer agree the way you used to, that you no longer stay silent the way you used to. And not everyone will be able to walk with you through that change. This is where the loneliness can enter. Not because you did something wrong, but because you did something real. Standing for truth often creates space around you, space in conversations, space in relationships, space in rooms that once felt full. And at first, that space can feel like emptiness. But if you stay there long enough, you begin to notice something else filling it. Presence. You begin to feel Allah in moments where you used to feel people. You begin to turn to prayer in moments where you used to turn to approval. You begin to sit with your own heart in ways you never did before. This is not loss. This is a shift. Allah is shifting your center. Before, your center may have been belonging, being liked, being included, being understood. Now, your center starts to move toward being sincere, being clean in intention, being steady in values, being at peace with Allah. And that center is much harder to shake. Let me tell you something important. When you stop pretending, you are not becoming someone else. You are becoming who you were meant to be. Pretending is what you learn to survive. Sincerity is what you were created to live. And Allah loves the version of you that does not need to perform to be worthy. He loves the version of you that prays even when no one sees, that chooses right even when no one claps, that walks away even when no one would have blamed you for staying. This is why this step feels so heavy and so sacred at the same time. It is heavy because you are letting go of what once held you. It is sacred because you are stepping into what will now hold you. And in this first lonely step, even if you cannot feel it yet, Allah is walking with you, not ahead of you, calling you to catch up, not behind you, watching you struggle alone, but beside you, steady and aware of every doubt, every fear, every quiet prayer you carry in your chest. So if today you feel like something inside you is rising, even as something around you is falling away, do not rush to push that feeling down. Sit with it. Listen to it. Bring it to Allah. Because this is not the day you are losing yourself. This is the day you are finally meeting yourself. And the place Allah is walking you toward is not just a place where your heart can breathe. It is a place where your soul can stand, honest and unafraid, knowing that even if the world does not fully understand you, Allah always does. Allah lets you be misunderstood, so you stop explaining yourself to the world. Let me speak to you about a pain that sits quietly in the heart, one that does not always show on the face. There is something deeply heavy about being misunderstood, about knowing your intention was clean but your action was questioned, about knowing your heart was sincere but your choice was judged. It can make you feel small, even when you know you stood for something right. At first, your instinct is to explain. You want to clarify, you want to defend, you want to be seen correctly. So you replay conversations in your mind. You imagine what you could have said differently. You think of better words, softer tones, clearer explanations. You carry these unfinished discussions with you, sometimes for days, sometimes for years. And all of that effort comes from one simple desire, to be understood. But let me tell you something gently. Not every heart is meant to understand you. Some hearts are only able to see what fits their own comfort. Some ears only hear what supports their own story. And Allah, in His wisdom, allows this to happen so that you slowly learn a powerful lesson. Your peace cannot live in people's understanding. If your peace depends on being seen correctly by everyone, you will never truly rest. Because there will always be someone who sees you through their own pain, their own expectations, their own limitations. So Allah allows you to be misunderstood, not to break you, but to free you. There comes a moment when you grow tired of carrying the weight of explanations, tired of correcting every assumption, tired of defending every choice, tired of proving that your heart is not what someone else decided it is. And in that tiredness, something begins to loosen inside you. You start to realize that your life was never meant to be a courtroom where you constantly present your case. You were not created to stand trial in the opinions of people. You were created to stand before Allah. And that shift changes everything. You begin to choose silence where you once chose defense. You begin to choose calm where you once chose argument. You begin to choose prayer where you once chose explanation. This does not mean you stop caring about people. It means you stop placing your worth in their ability to read your heart. Because only Allah can truly see what sits inside you. There is a strange kind of strength that grows when you let go of the need to be understood. It is not loud, it is not proud, it is quiet, steady and deeply rooted. You walk differently, you speak differently. You move through the world with less urgency to prove and more patience to trust. You start to realize that if Allah knows your intention, you are already safe. Let me tell you something that may surprise you. Sometimes Allah allows people to misunderstand you to protect you from their expectations. When people think they fully understand you, they often begin to place a role on you. They expect you to stay a certain way, to respond a certain way, to fit into a version of you they are comfortable with. But when you are misunderstood, those expectations loosen. You are no longer trapped in being who people think you are supposed to be. You are free to become who Allah is shaping you to be. This is not an easy freedom. It comes with loneliness. It comes with moments where you feel unseen, unheard, and unrecognized. But it also comes with something rare, peace. Because you are no longer living under the constant pressure of being interpreted correctly by everyone around you. You begin to live with a simpler question guiding your choices. Is Allah pleased? Not, do they understand? Not, do they agree? Not, do they approve? And this question becomes like a compass inside you. When you speak with intention, not with fear. When you act with sincerity, not with performance. When you walk away with trust, not with bitterness. But let me be honest with you. There will be moments when this hurts. There will be moments when you wish someone would see the good in you that you know is there. When you wish someone would recognize the struggle behind your strength, the care behind your boundaries, the sincerity behind your choices. And in those moments, take that ache to Allah. Say to Him, Ya Allah, you know what is in my heart. Because that sentence alone can carry more relief than 1,000 explanations ever could. You see, when you stand for truth, your life becomes less about being understood and more about being clean. Clean in intention, clean in action, clean in your relationship with Allah. And a clean heart does not need a loud defense. It needs quiet consistency. Over time, something beautiful happens. You begin to notice that the people who are meant to stay in your life do not need long explanations. They feel your sincerity without you having to describe it. They see your intention in the way you move, not just in the way you speak. And the ones who misunderstand you, they slowly fade, not always in anger, not always in conflict, sometimes just in distance. And that distance, as painful as it can feel, creates space in your life for relationships that are lighter, cleaner, and closer to who you are becoming. Let me share something gentle with you. Even the prophets were misunderstood. They were called names. Their intentions were questioned. Their sincerity was doubted. If the most truthful people to walk this earth were not spared from misunderstanding, why do we expect to be? But they did not spend their lives defending themselves. They spent their lives trusting Allah. And that trust carried them through every false word, every wrong assumption, every unfair judgment. So when you find yourself misunderstood today, do not immediately see it as a sign of failure. See it as a sign of transition. You are moving from living in people's opinions to living in Allah's care. And that is a far safer place to stand. Let me leave you with something to hold on to. You do not need to explain your heart to the world. You only need to keep it open to Allah. If He knows your intention, if He sees your effort, if He accepts your sincerity, then no misunderstanding can truly take away your worth. So walk gently, speak honestly, stand quietly, and let Allah be the one who knows you fully, even when the world only sees a small part of who you are becoming. Let me take you a little deeper into this, because this lesson does not end the first time your heart feels unseen. There is a second layer to being misunderstood that most people never talk about. It is not just about what others think of you. It is about what their misunderstanding begins to make you think of yourself. At first, you are confident in your intention. You know why you did what you did. You know what you meant. You know what you stood for. But when enough voices question you, when enough eyes look at you differently, a quiet doubt can begin to form. You start to ask yourself, did I do something wrong? Did I hurt someone without realizing it? Did I go too far? This is where the real test appears. Because Allah is not only teaching you to let go of people's opinions, He is teaching you to hold firmly to your own sincerity. There is a difference between reflecting and doubting who you are. Reflection is healthy. It is when you check your heart, your intention, your behavior, and you bring it to Allah. You ask Him to purify you, to correct you, to guide you. But doubt that comes from living in people's reactions is different. It slowly shifts your center away from Allah and back into the hands of the crowd. So Allah allows you to sit in misunderstanding long enough that you learn to return to the only place that can truly steady you, His presence. You begin to take your questions to Him instead of to people. You begin to sit in prayer instead of in arguments. You begin to seek clarity from the one who knows your heart better than you know it yourself. And in that space, something powerful happens. You start to hear a quieter voice inside you. Not the voice of criticism, not the voice of defense, but the voice of conscience. You begin to ask a different kind of question. Not, do they believe me? But is Allah pleased with me? This question does not create anxiety, it creates direction. Because when your goal becomes Allah's pleasure, life becomes simpler, even when it becomes harder. You no longer chase every misunderstanding to fix it. You no longer chase every rumor to correct it. You no longer chase every opinion to soften it. You begin to move with a steady rhythm, guided by something deeper than reaction. Let me tell you something that often surprises people. Being misunderstood can be a form of protection. When people think they fully understand you, they feel comfortable making demands of you. They feel entitled to your time, your energy, your emotional availability. They feel like they know how far they can go, how much they can take, how much they can expect. But when you are misunderstood, those expectations weaken. People are less likely to lean on you for what they want, less likely to pull you into roles you were never meant to play, less likely to shape you into a version of yourself that serves their needs more than it serves your purpose. So Allah allows a kind of distance to form, not to isolate you from kindness, but to protect you from being used, drained, or shaped by what does not align with who you are becoming. This is why over time you may notice your circle becoming smaller. Not because you became difficult, not because you became cold, but because your life is no longer centered around being understood by everyone. It is centered around being true with Allah. And that kind of life does not attract crowds. It attracts depth. You start to recognize people who do not need long explanations from you. People who feel your intention in your presence. People who trust your heart even when they do not fully understand your choices. These relationships are rare. They are quiet. They are steady. They are not built on performance. They are built on mutual sincerity. And often Allah makes space for these people by first allowing many others to step away. Let me speak gently to the part of you that still aches. There will still be nights when you wish someone would just see you clearly, when you wish someone would understand the care behind your boundaries, the love behind your distance, the faith behind your choices. In those moments, do not harden your heart. Do not tell yourself you do not care. You do care. And that is not a weakness. It is a sign that your heart is alive. But take that care to Allah, not to the world. Tell Him what you cannot say to people. Let Him hear the things you are tired of explaining. Let Him hold the part of you that feels unseen. Because He does not just understand you. He understands what you were trying to protect. He understands what you were trying to preserve. He understands what you were trying to obey. And there is a deep peace that comes from being known in that way. Over time, you may notice something else changing inside you. You stop needing to be right in every situation. You stop needing the last word. You stop needing people to walk away convinced. You become more comfortable walking away clean. Clean in intention, clean in action, clean in your relationship with Allah. And that cleanliness becomes your quiet confidence. You do not have to announce it. You do not have to defend it. It shows in how you move through life, in your patience, in your restraint, in your consistency. Let me leave you with this thought and let it sit gently in your heart. On the day you stand before Allah, there will be no misunderstandings. There will be no rumors, no assumptions, no half stories. There will only be truth. Your intention will be known. Your effort will be seen. Your sincerity will be clear. So if today you walk through a world that does not fully understand you, remember this: you are not walking toward their final judgment. You are walking toward His. And the one you are walking toward already knows you completely. Your loneliness is a door Allah opens, not a wall He closes. Let me speak to you about the kind of loneliness that does not come from being around no one, but from being around many and still feeling unseen. There is a moment in life when the noise fades, not because the world becomes quiet, but because your heart stops finding comfort in the same sounds. Conversations feel lighter than what you are carrying. Laughter feels distant from what you are feeling. Places that once felt full now feel hollow. And you begin to wonder, Ya Allah, why do I feel so alone even when I am not? This is not the loneliness of abandonment. This is the loneliness of transition. It is what happens when your soul begins to move into a deeper place while your surroundings remain where they are. At first, this feels painful. You look for connection in the same places you always did, but it no longer satisfies you. You reach for the same distractions, the same routines, the same comforts, and they no longer quiet the ache inside you. And this can make you feel like something is wrong with you. But let me tell you gently, nothing is wrong. Something is changing. Allah often begins to guide a person not by giving them more, but by making less enough. Less noise feels satisfying. Less company feels fulfilling. Less movement feels meaningful. You begin to crave depth instead of volume. Stillness instead of speed, presence instead of attention. And that shift can feel like loneliness, because the world is not built for stillness. It is built for constant motion, constant talking, constant reaching. So when you slow down inside, you start to feel out of place. This is where many people run back to the crowd. They fill their time, their space, their hearts just to escape the discomfort of being alone with themselves. But Allah invites you to do something different. He invites you to stay, to sit in the quiet, to listen in the stillness, to feel what is rising in your chest instead of drowning it out. Because there are things Allah wants to show you that cannot be seen in noise. There are questions He wants you to ask that cannot be heard in distraction. There are answers He wants to place in your heart that cannot land in a crowded space. Loneliness in this way becomes a doorway into honesty. You begin to see what you were using to avoid yourself. You begin to recognize which relationships were built on habit instead of connection, which routines were built on comfort instead of meaning, which goals were built on expectation instead of purpose. And this is not an easy sight. It can make you grieve the version of your life that once felt simpler, the version of you that could be satisfied with less depth, less awareness, less questioning. But Allah does not take you backward. He moves you forward, even when forward feels empty at first. Let me tell you something that often goes unnoticed. When Allah wants to draw someone closer, He does not always make them feel more loved by people. He often makes them feel more in need of Him. So you begin to turn to prayer not just out of habit, but out of hunger. You begin to sit with the Quran not just out of duty, but out of longing. You begin to speak to Allah not just with words you memorized, but with feelings you cannot organize. Your dua becomes less polished and more honest. You stop saying what you think you are supposed to say. You start saying what you are actually feeling. And this is where a different kind of relationship with Allah begins. Not one built on routine alone, but one built on reliance. This is why loneliness can feel so close to spirituality, because in loneliness, you stop leaning on people the way you used to. You stop leaning on distraction the way you used to. You stop leaning on the world to hold you up, and you begin to lean on Allah. At first, this feels scary. You may think, what if I fall? What if I cannot carry this by myself? But you are not being asked to carry it by yourself. You are being asked to place it in hands stronger than yours. Let me speak to the part of you that feels the nights more deeply. The quiet hours when your phone is still, the room is dark, and your thoughts become loud. These moments can feel heavy. Memories rise. Questions surface. Worries appear. But these moments are also invitations. Invitations to speak to Allah without interruption, to cry without being watched, to admit things you hide in the day. There is a kind of healing that only happens in private, when no one is there to judge your words, your tears, your doubts, only Allah. And in those moments, something begins to soften inside you. You start to realize that you are not as alone as you thought. You were just in a different kind of company. The company of the one who knows your heart before you explain it, the one who sees your struggle before you name it, the one who understands your silence as clearly as your speech. This is not the loneliness of being forgotten. This is the closeness of being noticed. Over time, you may notice something else. Your tolerance for shallow connection decreases. Your patience for empty talk fades. Your interest in things that once excited you begins to shift. You are not becoming distant. You are becoming selective. You begin to value the few conversations that feel real over the many that feel light. You begin to treasure the one or two people who can sit with you in silence without needing to fill it. And you begin to treasure your time with Allah in a way you never did before. This is how loneliness reshapes your world. Not by making it smaller, but by making it deeper. Let me tell you something beautiful about this stage. When you walk through loneliness with Allah, you come out with a different kind of strength. Not the strength that comes from being surrounded, but the strength that comes from being grounded. You learn how to sit with yourself without running. You learn how to face your thoughts without escaping. You learn how to trust Allah without needing constant reassurance from people. And this kind of strength is quiet. It does not announce itself. It does not show off, but it holds you steady when life begins to shake. So if today you feel like you are standing in a wide, empty space, do not rush to fill it. Do not panic. Do not assume something has been taken from you. Ask instead, Ya Allah, what are you showing me here? Because very often this space is not a loss. It is a classroom, a place where Allah teaches you how to be present with Him, how to be honest with yourself, and how to carry your heart without dropping it into every hand that reaches for it. Let me leave you with this to hold gently. Loneliness is not always a sign that you have been left behind. Sometimes it is a sign that you have been led somewhere higher, somewhere quieter, somewhere closer to Allah. And from this place, the world does not look the same anymore. It looks smaller and Allah looks bigger. And that, my dear heart, is not emptiness. That is clarity. Let me stay with you here a little longer, because this doorway does not just lead to quiet, it leads to truth about yourself that most people spend their entire lives running from. There is a moment in loneliness when the distractions finally fall away. No one is calling, no one is asking, no one is pulling at your attention. And in that stillness, you are left with something powerful and uncomfortable at the same time. You are left with yourself. Your thoughts begin to surface without being filtered by conversation. Your memories rise without being softened by noise. Your hopes, your regrets, your fears, your unanswered questions, they all begin to speak at once. And this can feel overwhelming. You may think, Ya Allah, I did not ask for this, I just wanted peace. But let me tell you something gently. Peace is not the absence of noise. Peace is the presence of understanding. And understanding often begins in moments that feel unsettled. This is where Allah begins to show you who you have been carrying inside you all along. You start to notice patterns in your life that you never had time to see before. The way you keep returning to certain situations, the way you respond when you feel rejected, the way you seek approval when you feel unsure, the way you pull back when you feel vulnerable. These are not random behaviors. They are messages. Messages from your own heart about what it is still holding, still protecting, still healing from. And loneliness gives these messages space to speak. This is why some people fear being alone. Not because being alone is empty, but because being alone is honest. You cannot hide from yourself in silence the way you can in company. So Allah, in His mercy, brings you into a season where you cannot escape your own reflection. Not to shame you, but to heal you. Healing does not always look like comfort. Sometimes it looks like awareness. Sometimes it looks like realizing, this is where I am still hurting. This is where I am still holding on. This is where I am still afraid. And once you can name these places in your heart, you can finally bring them to Allah. You stop making general dua. You stop saying, Ya Allah, fix everything. And you start saying, Ya Allah, this part of me is tired. This part of me is scared. This part of me still remembers something I thought I had moved past. Your prayers become specific. Your reliance becomes personal. Your relationship with Allah becomes intimate in a way that cannot be taught in a crowd. Let me tell you something beautiful about this stage. Allah often shows you yourself before He shows you what He plans to give you. Because if He gave you new blessings with an unhealed heart, you might use those blessings to cover your wounds instead of cure them. So He pauses the outer world. He slows the movement. He quiets the voices, so the inner world can finally be addressed. This is why loneliness can feel like being held in place, like life is not moving forward the way it used to. But something is moving forward. Your awareness, your maturity, your depth. You begin to realize that not every relationship you miss was good for you. Not every door that closed was a loss. Not every season that ended was meant to continue. And this realization does not always come with relief. Sometimes it comes with grief. You grieve the version of your life you thought you would have. The people you thought would always be there. The future you imagined in a certain shape. And Allah allows you to feel that grief. Because grief is not weakness. Grief is love with nowhere to go. And when you bring that love to Allah, it does not disappear. It transforms. It becomes trust. It becomes patience. It becomes a deeper understanding of what truly lasts. Let me speak to the part of you that feels forgotten in this quiet season. You may look around and think, no one is noticing me. No one is reaching out. No one seems to care where I am. And that can make you feel invisible. But let me offer you a different way to see this. Sometimes Allah makes you invisible to people so you can become visible to Him in a new way. When there is no audience, you stop performing. When there is no crowd, you stop comparing. When there is no one watching, you start living more honestly. You pray because you need to, not because it looks good. You give because your heart moves you, not because someone will notice. You hold back from what is wrong because you respect Allah, not because someone might judge you. This is where sincerity deepens. This is where your faith becomes rooted instead of displayed. And a rooted faith does not fall easily when life begins to shake. Over time, you may notice that this season changes how you see people. You become gentler, not because you are softer, but because you understand more. You realize that everyone is carrying something. Everyone is walking through a story you cannot fully see. Everyone has their own loneliness, even if it looks different from yours. This understanding makes you less quick to judge and more quick to show mercy. And this is one of the quiet gifts Allah places in the hearts of those who walk through loneliness with Him. Let me leave you with something to hold on to as you move through this doorway. This season is not meant to be rushed. You do not need to escape it. You do not need to fill it. You do not need to fix it. You need to walk through it. Because on the other side of this quiet, there is a version of you that is steadier, clearer, and less dependent on the world to tell you who you are. And when you meet that version of yourself, you will realize something. You were never alone in this place. You were being accompanied by Allah in a way that only happens when everything else becomes quiet. So stand here gently. Let the silence teach you. Let the stillness shape you. Let the closeness with Allah become something you carry even when the noise returns. Because once you learn how to walk with Him in the quiet, you will never truly feel lost in the crowd again. Let me speak to you about a kind of loss that does not happen all at once, but slowly, quietly, almost gently. It begins when the room feels less full than it used to. The messages come less often. The invitations stop arriving the way they once did. The circle that once felt wide and busy begins to feel smaller and still. At first, you may not even notice it. Life is moving, days are passing, and you assume people are just busy. But then there comes a moment when it becomes clear your world has grown quieter. And in that quiet, a question rises in your heart. Ya Allah, where did everyone go? This is one of the most difficult moments in a person's journey, not because something has been taken away, but because something familiar has changed. The comfort of being surrounded, of being known, of being included begins to fade. And that fading can feel like rejection even when no one has said a word. Your heart may begin to search for reasons. Did I do something wrong? Did I change too much? Did I say something I should not have said? And sometimes the answer is not about what you did. Sometimes the answer is about what you became. There is a truth about growth that is rarely spoken out loud. Not everyone can walk with you when you begin to walk more honestly. Not everyone can stay when your values become clearer, your boundaries become firmer, and your purpose becomes quieter but heavier. So Allah, in His mercy, begins to thin the crowd, not in anger, not in punishment, but in kari. Let me tell you something gently. When there are many people around you, it becomes easy to live for their eyes instead of Allah's. Even without realizing it, your heart can begin to measure its worth by reactions, responses, and recognition. You start to notice who notices you. You start to feel when you are ignored. You start to care about where you stand in the room. And slowly, quietly, your intention can shift. So Allah, who loves your heart more than you love your image, begins to remove the audience. Not all at once, but enough that you begin to feel the space. At first, that space feels uncomfortable. It feels like something is missing. It feels like a part of your life has gone quiet in a way you did not choose. But stay there for a moment, because something powerful begins to happen in that space. You start to see your actions more clearly. When no one is watching, you begin to ask, why am I really doing this? You pray when no one reminds you. You hold back from what is wrong when no one would ever know. You choose what is right when there is no reward in sight. And in those moments, your faith becomes real in a way it never could in front of a crowd. This is where sincerity is born. Sincerity is not what you show when people are around. Sincerity is what you choose when no one is there to see it. Let me speak to the part of you that misses the old noise. You may miss the laughter, the shared moments, the feeling of being part of something bigger. You may scroll through old messages, old pictures, old memories, and feel a quiet ache. And that ache is human. Allah does not ask you to become stone. He allows you to feel. But He also invites you to see something deeper. Some relationships exist to carry you through a season, not through a lifetime. Some circles are meant to shape you at one stage of your journey and then gently fall away when you begin to grow beyond that stage. This does not mean those people were bad. It means the purpose of that connection has changed. And Allah, who sees your entire path, knows when a space that once supported you would now hold you back. So He creates distance, not to punish you, but to protect what He is building inside you. Let me tell you something important about sincerity. Sincerity cannot survive in constant performance. If you are always being seen, always being noticed, always being reacted to, it becomes difficult to tell where your intention truly lies. Even good actions can begin to lean toward being appreciated instead of being accepted by Allah. So Allah gives you moments where no one claps, moments where no one thanks you, moments where no one even knows what you chose or what you gave up. And in those moments, you find out who you are really living for. This is where your relationship with Allah deepens in a way that is quiet and strong. You begin to talk to Him about things you do not talk to anyone else about. You begin to bring Him your doubts, your fears, your small victories, your silent struggles. You stop performing your faith. You start living it. Over time, this changes how you see the world. You become less impressed by attention, less moved by praise, less shaken by criticism. Not because you no longer care, but because your heart has found a steadier place to rest. Let me speak gently to the fear that may rise in you. You may worry that this quiet will last forever, that this small circle will never grow again, that this season of few will become your whole life. But Allah is not taking people away to leave you empty. He is making room for relationships that can meet you where you are going, not where you have been. Room for connections that are built on sincerity, not convenience. Room for hearts that recognize your depth without needing you to explain it. But before those hearts can enter, Allah often clears the space. And that clearing can feel lonely. Let me tell you something beautiful about a small crowd. A small crowd allows you to be seen clearly. You are not a face in a group. You are a heart in a relationship. You are not a voice in noise. You are a presence in silence. And this kind of connection, though fewer, is often deeper, stronger, and more lasting. Let me leave you with this to hold close. If your world feels quieter today, do not assume you have been forgotten. Sometimes Allah quiets your surroundings so you can finally hear Him. Sometimes He removes the crowd so your heart can become a place of truth, not a stage of performance. And when you begin to live from that place, you carry a sincerity that does not depend on who is watching. You carry a faith that does not fade when the room empties. And that, my dear heart, is a kind of strength that no crowd could ever give you. Your difference is where Allah hid your responsibility. Let me speak to the part of you that has always felt a little out of place, even when you tried your best to belong. There is a quiet feeling some people carry their entire lives, a sense that they do not fully fit into the rooms they walk into, that their laughter does not rise at the same moments, that their heart feels heavier, deeper, more aware than the space around them. And for a long time, this can feel like a flaw. You may look at others and wonder why things seem easier for them, why they move so freely, speak so lightly, and live so comfortably within the world as it is. You may ask yourself, Ya Allah, why do I feel like I am always standing just slightly apart? But let me tell you something gently. Not everyone is meant to walk lightly through life. Some people are meant to carry weight, not the weight of sadness, but the weight of awareness. The weight of restraint, the weight of standing firm when others lean, the weight of seeing what others pass by. Allah places this weight carefully. He does not place it on every heart. He places it on hearts He knows can hold it even when it feels heavy. This is why your difference does not feel decorative. It feels demanding. You cannot ignore things that others laugh away. You cannot move past situations that others forget. You cannot blend into places that others settle into. Your heart keeps asking deeper questions. Why is this right? Why is this wrong? What does this mean for my faith? What does this mean for my akhirah? And sometimes you wish your heart would just be quiet. You wish you could enjoy things without thinking so much. You wish you could move through life without feeling the weight behind every choice. But this questioning is not a burden meant to exhaust you. It is a responsibility meant to guide you. Let me tell you something few people realize. Allah often gives responsibility before He gives clarity. He places a sense of seriousness in your heart before He shows you what you are meant to carry. He gives you discomfort with what is shallow before He shows you what is deep. He gives you restlessness in ordinary spaces before He leads you to your real place. This is why you may feel like you do not fully belong anywhere yet, because you are being shaped for somewhere else, not necessarily a place on a map, but a place in purpose. Let me speak to the moments when your difference makes you feel alone, when you choose not to say what everyone else is saying, when you choose not to go where everyone else is going, when you choose not to laugh at what everyone else finds funny, and the room goes quiet and eyes turn, and you feel that familiar sense of standing apart. In those moments, it can feel like you are being left out. But what if in those moments you are being set aside, not as someone rejected, but as someone reserved? Reserved for something that cannot be carried by a heart that moves with every wind. Reserved for something that requires steadiness, patience, and depth. Allah does not give heavy trusts to light hearts. He gives them to hearts that can feel, reflect, and hold. This is why you may feel things more deeply than others, why words stay with you longer, why moments linger in your chest instead of passing through. Your heart is not built to skim the surface of life. It is built to go beneath it. And that kind of heart needs guidance, not distraction. Let me tell you something important. Difference often comes before direction. Before Allah shows you what you are meant to do, He shows you what you are not meant to be. Before He gives you a role, He gives you a distance from certain paths. Before He gives you clarity, He gives you discomfort with what does not align. So when you feel out of place, do not rush to force yourself to fit. Do not sand down the edges of your values to become smoother in the hands of others. Do not quiet your conscience just to stay comfortable, because those edges, those questions, those pauses, they are not accidents. They are markers of a heart that is being trained to stand, not to follow. Let me speak to the fear that sometimes comes with this. You may worry that your difference will isolate you forever, that you will always feel like the one standing slightly apart, that you will never find people who move at your pace or see at your depth. But Allah does not give you a different heart to leave you alone. He gives you a different heart to lead you to the right company. Company that does not need you to explain your seriousness. Company that does not mock your restraint. Company that respects your silence as much as your speech. But often before that company enters your life, Allah trains you to be comfortable in your own presence, to sit with your own heart, to trust your own conscience, to walk with Allah even when no one else is walking beside you. This is part of the responsibility. Because if you cannot stand alone, you cannot stand when it truly matters. Let me tell you something beautiful about this stage. When you accept your difference, it stops feeling like a wound and starts feeling like a trust. You stop asking, why am I like this? And you start asking, what am I meant to do with this? And that question changes how you live. You become more careful with your words, more thoughtful with your actions, more intentional with your time. Not because you are trying to be perfect, but because you sense that your life carries meaning beyond just getting through the day. Let me leave you with something to hold close. Your difference is not a mistake in your design. It is a sign of your assignment. Allah has placed something in your heart that not everyone is meant to carry. He has given you a way of seeing, feeling, and standing that is meant to serve something greater than comfort. So do not rush to trade that weight for ease. Do not trade that awareness for belonging. Do not trade that responsibility for applause. Because the place Allah is preparing for you does not need someone who blends in. It needs someone who can stand. And if today you feel different, heavier, more aware than the world around you, remember this. You are not being pushed away. You are being prepared. Allah raises you by freeing you from needing the world. Let me speak to you about a kind of elevation that does not look like success on the outside, but feels like freedom on the inside. Most people think being raised means gaining something, gaining attention, gaining influence, gaining approval, gaining people who stand around them and speak their name. But Allah often raises a person by taking something away first. He begins by gently loosening the grip the world has on your heart. At first, you may not even notice it happening. You just feel a subtle change in what moves you. Things that once excited you do not pull you the same way anymore. Praise that once made your heart lift now passes through you more quietly. Criticism that once cut deeply now settles without shaking you. And you may wonder, what is happening to me? What is happening is that Allah is shifting your center. Before, your center may have been in people's reactions, how they see you, what they say about you. Where you stand in their eyes, your heart would rise and fall with their approval and their disappointment. But Allah does not want your heart to live on something so fragile. So He begins to free you from it. This freedom does not arrive suddenly. It comes in small moments. Moments when you choose to do the right thing even though no one will notice. Moments when you walk away from something wrong even though no one would have blamed you for staying. Moments when you hold your tongue even though you could have spoken and been justified. Each of these moments loosens a thread that once tied your peace to people. Over time, those threads fall away and your heart becomes lighter. Let me tell you something honest. At first, this can feel like loss. You may feel less connected to the world around you, less involved in the constant movement of opinions, reactions, and attention. You may feel like you are stepping back while everyone else is stepping forward. But what is really happening is that you are stepping higher, not louder. Allah is teaching you to stand in a place where you are not pulled by every voice that calls your name. Because a heart that needs constant validation is a heart that can be controlled. And Allah does not want your heart to be controlled by the world. He wants it to be anchored in Him. Let me speak to the moment when this lesson becomes clear. It is often in a situation where you could chase approval, but you choose peace instead. Where you could argue to be right, but you choose to be clean. Where you could stay to be seen, but you choose to leave to stay true. And afterward, you feel something unexpected. Relief. Not the relief of being understood, but the relief of being aligned. That relief is a sign of elevation, because you have moved from needing the world to needing Allah. And needing Allah is not a weakness. It is the strongest position a heart can hold. Let me tell you something beautiful about this stage. When you no longer need the world, you begin to serve it better, because you are not giving to be liked. You are not helping to be noticed. You are not standing for truth to be praised. You are doing these things because your heart is connected to something higher. And that connection gives your actions a quiet power. People may not always understand you. They may not always agree with you. But they will feel something steady in you. They will sense that you are not easily swayed, that you are not easily bought, that you are not easily shaken. And this steadiness is not something you can learn from books or speeches. It is something Allah places in the heart of someone who has learned to let go of needing the world. Let me speak gently to the fear that can rise here. You may worry that if you stop needing people, you will become distant, cold, or disconnected. But freeing your heart from dependence does not mean closing it to love. It means opening it to a cleaner kind of love. A love that gives without demanding. A love that cares without controlling. A love that stays sincere even when it is not returned in the same way. This kind of love is not fragile. It is rooted, and rooted love does not collapse when it is tested. Let me leave you with something to carry into your day. When Allah raises you, He does not always place you above others. Sometimes He places you above the need for others, above the fear of being disliked, above the hunger to be praised, above the pressure to be included. And from that higher place, you begin to walk through the world differently. You walk with less urgency, less anxiety, less need to prove. You walk with trust. Trust that what is meant for you will reach you. Trust that who is meant to stay will stay. Trust that Allah sees every quiet choice you make, even when no one else does. So if today you feel like your heart is slowly letting go of the world's grip, do not be afraid. You are not losing connection. You are gaining freedom. And freedom in the care of Allah is one of the greatest forms of being raised. When you stand alone, you stand in Allah's care. Let me speak to you now at the deepest point of this journey, where everything becomes quiet enough for the truth to settle. There comes a moment when you realize something that changes how you walk through the world. You are not being carried by people. You are being carried by Allah. At first, this realization does not feel comforting. It feels unsettling, because we grow up learning to measure safety by who is around us, who supports us, who stands with us, who speaks for us. So when the crowd thins, when the voices fade, when the hands you once held are no longer there, your heart can feel exposed, like you are standing in an open place with nothing to lean on. But this is where Allah meets you in a way that is different from everything before. Not through noise, not through distraction, not through people, but through presence. You begin to notice Him in moments you used to rush past. In the quiet before you speak, in the pause before you decide, in the breath you take when you feel overwhelmed. You start to realize that even when no one else is standing beside you, you are not standing by yourself. You are standing in care. Let me tell you something important. Allah does not leave His servants alone. He removes what they were leaning on so they can finally lean on Him. This is a subtle and powerful shift. Before, you may have leaned on reassurance from people. Their approval gave you confidence. Their presence gave you comfort. Their agreement gave you peace. But all of that is fragile. People change. Situations change. Feelings change. So Allah begins to move your heart towards something that does not, Him. At first, this feels like losing balance. You reach for the same support you always did and it is no longer there. You look for the same comfort and it no longer holds you the way it used to. And in that moment, you are forced to look upward instead of around. This is not an accident. This is an invitation. An invitation to trust Allah not just with your prayers, but with your entire sense of security. Let me speak to the part of you that feels afraid in this place. You may think, what if I fail? What if I make the wrong choice? What if I walk this path and it leads to nothing? But let me tell you something gently. A path walked with Allah never leads to nothing. It may not lead where you expected. It may not look how you imagined, but it will always lead where you need to be. This is why standing in Allah's care feels different from standing in people's support. People can stand with you and still not understand where you are going. Allah stands with you and already knows the end of the path. So when you feel unsure, when you feel small, when you feel like your steps are quiet and unnoticed, remember this. Allah does not guide loudly. He guides accurately. He places something in your heart that pulls you in the right direction, even when your mind is confused. He closes doors that look good and opens doors that look small, because He sees what you cannot see yet. Let me tell you something beautiful about being in Allah's care. It does not mean life becomes easy. It means life becomes meaningful. You still feel pain, you still face loss, you still walk through uncertainty, but you no longer walk through it alone. You begin to sense that even the hard moments are not random, even the delays are not wasted, even the disappointments are not empty. They are part of how Allah shapes you. You start to see your life less as a series of accidents and more as a guided journey. This changes how you respond to things. When something falls apart, you do not immediately fall with it. When something leaves, you do not immediately chase after it. When something hurts, you do not immediately assume you are being punished. Instead, you pause. You ask, Ya Allah, what are you teaching me here? And that question alone can turn pain into purpose. Let me speak to the nights when you feel this lesson the most. The nights when everything is still, when the world feels far away, when your thoughts feel close and heavy. These are often the moments when Allah's care feels nearest. Not because the problems disappear, but because your heart becomes softer, more honest, more open. You speak to Allah without a script, without formality, without trying to sound strong. You speak to Him as you are, and in that honesty, you feel something that cannot be given by people. Relief. Not relief that everything is fixed, but relief that everything is held. Held by a mercy that does not get tired. Held by a wisdom that does not make mistakes. Held by a care that does not walk away. Let me tell you something that may surprise you. Standing in Allah's care does not make you weaker in the world. It makes you steadier in it. You become less reactive, less easily shaken, less pulled in every direction by every opinion, every trend, every pressure, because your heart is anchored somewhere deeper. You know who you answer to. You know where you return. You know what truly matters. This does not make you distant from people. It makes you healthier with them. You can care without clinging. You can give without losing yourself. You can stand for truth without needing to win. Because your sense of worth is no longer being negotiated in every conversation. It is settled. Let me leave you with something to carry with you as you move forward from this place. When you stand alone for truth, you are not standing in a vulnerable position. You are standing in a protected one. You are standing under a care that sees you when no one else does. You are standing under a guidance that leads you even when you feel lost. You are standing under a mercy that holds you even when you feel tired. So walk gently, walk honestly, walk without fear of being unseen, because you are seen, not by the crowd, but by Allah, and the one who sees you in this world will not forget you in the next. That is the highest place a person can ever stand. The higher place is not where people can see you, it is where your heart can stand. Let me speak to you about the kind of ending that does not close a story but completes it. There comes a moment in this journey when you realize something quietly and without drama. You were never being led toward a higher place in the eyes of people. You were being led toward a higher place inside yourself. All along, you may have imagined elevation as something visible, a change others would notice, a moment where your life would look different on the outside. But Allah's way is often the opposite. He changes the inside so deeply that the outside becomes less important. You begin to realize that the greatest height a person can reach is not being admired, it is being at peace. Peace with who you are, peace with what you choose, peace with what you leave behind. This peace does not come from having everything. It comes from no longer needing everything. Let me take you back to the beginning of this journey. You started by letting go of pretending. You learned to walk through being misunderstood. You sat in loneliness instead of running from it. You allowed the crowd to thin so your sincerity could grow. You accepted your difference as a responsibility, not a flaw. You learned to be raised by being freed from needing the world. You learn to stand in Allah's care instead of people's support. And now you arrive here at a place where your heart is quieter. Not because life is silent, but because you are no longer at war inside yourself. You stop arguing with your own conscience. You stop negotiating with your own values. You stop trying to be two different people in two different spaces. You become whole. This is a higher place. Let me speak to the moment when you notice this change. It is often in a simple situation. Someone criticizes you and you listen instead of reacting. Someone misunderstands you and you stay calm instead of defending. Something you wanted does not come and you trust instead of collapsing. And you pause afterward and think, I would not have handled this like this before. This is growth, not loud, not announced, but real. Let me tell you something beautiful about this stage. You begin to live with a sense of inner dignity. You no longer feel the need to chase what walks away. You no longer feel the need to prove what you know in your heart. You no longer feel the need to explain your worth to every room you enter. You walk in with something that cannot be taken from you. Clarity. Clarity about what you stand for. Clarity about what you will not compromise. Clarity about where you return when things become heavy. This clarity becomes your quiet strength. And this is often when Allah begins to place you in spaces you never could have entered before. Not because you pushed your way in, but because you became someone who could carry what those spaces require. Let me speak to the idea of higher in a way the world does not. Higher is not having more people around you. Higher is needing fewer people to feel complete. Higher is not having more control. Higher is having more trust. Higher is not being untouched by pain. Higher is being unbroken by it. This is the place Allah prepares for those who stand for truth. Not a place where life stops testing them, but a place where they stop being defined by the tests. Let me speak to the part of you that still wonders, will this ever be worth it? There will be moments when you look back at what you lost, the friendships that faded, the paths you did not take, the versions of life you walked away from, and there may be a quiet ache, but there will also be something else, a deep sense of rightness. You will realize that even though those things might have given you comfort, they would not have given you peace. And peace is heavier than comfort. Peace can carry you through nights when comfort cannot reach you. Peace can hold you steady when approval disappears. Peace can remind you who you are when the world tries to rename you. This is what Allah has been building inside you all along. Let me tell you something that brings this journey full circle. Standing alone for truth does not make you small in this world. It makes you clear, and clarity is rare. Most people move through life confused about who they are, what they stand for, and where they are going. They are pulled by trends, by opinions, by fear of being left out. But you have learned how to stand, not against people, but for something, for sincerity, for obedience, for a heart that belongs to Allah before it belongs to the world. And that is a higher place than any position, any title, any platform. Let me leave you with this final thought, and let it settle gently in your heart. One day, you will stand in front of Allah. No crowd will be there. No voices will speak for you. No explanations will be needed. There will only be you and the one who guided you through every step of this journey. And in that moment, you will not remember how many people walked with you. You will remember that you walked with Him. So stand gently in this world. Stand honestly in your choices. Stand quietly in your faith. Because the highest place Allah prepares for you is not somewhere you arrive. It is someone you become. And when you become that person, you carry that place with you wherever you go, in this life and in the next. And now, as you sit here at the end of this message, let me leave you with this gently. You were never walking this path to impress the world. You were walking it to return to Allah with a heart that is clean, steady, and unashamed of the truth it carried. If today your circle is small, let it be sincere. If today your life is quiet, let it be honest. If today your steps feel unseen, let them be guided. Because the one who watched you stand when no one clapped is the same one who will stand with you when no one else can. So do not rush your becoming. Do not regret what you released. Do not doubt what Allah is shaping in you right now. Walk gently from here. Speak honestly from here. Stand firmly from here. And when the world grows loud again, remember this moment of quiet. The moment you realized you were never alone. You were being carried by Allah all along.